I'll write down everything that happened to me over the past 2 weeks. It'll probably read like a creepypasta, I guess. At the end, I'll explain what kind of help I need, and if there's even the slightest chance you can provide it. Write to the throwaway address need help.snidemail.ru. I can't pay right now, but we'll settle up later. Don't write in the comments wherever you read this. If you're reposting, please don't remove the email address. Today is March 25th, 2016, and if you're reading this much later, then one way or another, it's already over. Okay, I'm 32, former programmer, more of a web monkey, really, and I currently work as a chimney sweep in the DC. Yes, an actual chimney sweep. People are always surprised that profession still exists, but yes, it does. I fell into it by accident 3 years ago, when the tiny studio where we'd been outsourcing automated business processes for various companies and factories went under, along with all the Drupal and WordPress shops we were building on the side. The crisis, all that crap. I was actually looking for a job as an industrial climber and stumbled onto this one by mistake. I won't name the company here. There aren't many of us, even in DC. 9 people total, 3 two-man crews. The boss, a reasonable enough guy, an accountant, and some guy who's either deputy or secretary. I could never figure out what exactly he does besides finding clients, making calls, and running social media pages. Small but steady business. We install and service flue systems for fireplaces and boiler rooms, ventilation setups in offices, massive coils in shopping centers, and of course, we clean those same flues. And don't make chimney sweep jokes. It stopped being funny a long time ago. Mostly, though, we clean and maintain ventilation ducts in panel block apartment buildings. There's actually a whole science to chimney sweeping. There are codes and standards for everything: project documentation, inspection schedules, safety regulations. The state of your ventilation, the routing diagrams, GOST compliance, materials, all of it, directly affects your chances of surviving a fire in the building, and whether one breaks out in the first place. If the ancient old woman next door forgets to shut off the gas, whether the whole stairwell blows up or not can come down to the condition of your duct. Most of the work is on the rooftops of panel blocks and Stalinist-era buildings. Our equipment is medieval simple: a weight and a brush on a long cable, same as the Middle Ages. The one modern piece of kit: a wide-angle camera with LED lighting on the end of a long, flexible probe. You feed the probe down from the roof into a duct of any configuration, and you watch the feed on a laptop or a little monitor off a car dash cam. That's how you do the initial inspection, find the cause of a blockage, and so on. A man contacted us with a complaint about foreign objects in his ventilation duct. The client's story was this: his young son and his wife had been saying that something was knocking on their wall at night. It was irregular, with gaps between sounds, but then the knocking and scratching would come again. It was coming from the wall of the bathroom, separate toilet and bath. At first they assumed it was a troubled neighbor, but no, the neighbors weren't even home at the time. The man knocked on the wall himself and figured out that something was hammering at him from inside the vent shaft. His little boy kept asking who was knocking behind the wall. I went alone for the initial inspection. I got the roof access key from the building management office, signed for it, and climbed up. Found the right outlet, laid out my coil of cable with the weight on the rooftop tar, along with the laptop and the camera cable spool, and started feeding the camera down the shaft. Lit a cigarette while I was at it. Business as usual. The building, for those who care, was a 12-story panel block, Series P46. I fed the cable down slowly and watched the screen. On the monitor, a jerky forward, actually downward, crawl through a concrete shaft. Fairly clean, as it happened. Typical image. You can see a couple of meters ahead, and beyond that, blackness. And that's when things went wrong. Completely wrong. As I got close to the 7th floor level, I kept my eyes fixed on the monitor. And I noticed that instead of the usual dry dust fringe on one of the shaft walls, there was something like a dark brownish slime with clumps and growths on it. On one wall only. It faintly resembled what you sometimes see from homemade kitchen exhausts that pull in grease and fat from the stove. But this was more like moldy stalactites rising from a layer of dense sludge. It caught the LED light and gleamed like something wet. And the further I fed the cable down, the longer and more branching the growths became, almost bushy. I stopped level with the 7th floor, but there was nothing there except the mold itself. I started back down and noticed something was wrong with the shaft wall. And there I was, standing on the roof in my work gear, holding the cable, glancing over at the laptop. And I just couldn't fucking believe what I was seeing. On the concrete wall of the main shaft, right at the level of the client's apartment, covered in mold but still clearly visible, gouges, scratches, these half-finished holes. The whole thing looked exactly like something had been clawing through reinforced concrete for a very long time, and making progress. I could see the rebar. The pits were 5 or 6 centimeters deep, and the wall itself wasn't much thicker than that. Anyway, I kept lowering the camera, decided to go all the way to the bottom. And sure enough, by the 5th floor, the shaft walls were coated in a thick layer of mold. I tried my best not to drag the wire through it. At the 3rd floor, a white, eyeless face stared up at me out of the darkness at the edge of the camera's range. It looked like a motionless ceramic mask, aimed straight at the lens. Where the eyes should have been, 2 black holes, nothing else visible. The shock of it made me let go of the cable for a fraction of a second, and it slipped a meter under its own weight. The image on the monitor lurched forward, right toward the white face. I still couldn't make out anything beyond the mask and the darkness behind it. But when I grabbed the cable tight again, the face began moving closer on its own. Cursing from pure terror, I hauled the cable up as fast as I could, eyes bugging out at the monitor. I was soaked through with cold sweat, stomach heaving. The motionless face kept vanishing into the dark, then reappearing close to the camera. It was following the light. And I understood, in one sickening moment, that it would make it to the roof. On autopilot, I stepped on the cord, bent down, grabbed the weight, and dropped it into the shaft. It hit the thing with a soft thud and knocked it back down. I knew because of how fast the line unspooled. The thing didn't make a sound, but the rustling and the wet noises stopped. It took me a while to pull up the full length of cable. When the camera finally shot out of the pipe, I lost my balance and slammed my back against the rooftop railing, nearly went over. Then I hauled up the line with the weight. The weight was coated in that black stuff, like used motor oil, and the probe even more so. I drove straight home. I was speeding the whole way, clipped a curb, and cracked the bumper. Didn't give a damn. It's my car, not the company's. Got home, stripped down, shoved the overalls in the hamper, scrubbed myself with water as hot as I could stand. For some reason, I was convinced that if any of that slime was still on me, the thing with the mockery of a face could track me by the smell. I called in sick. That evening, I picked my daughter up from school, fed her, put her to bed early, got the vodka out of the freezer and drank until I couldn't anymore. I spent the day at home, turning it all over in my mind. My prick of a supervisor called. He'd put me on a crew first thing the next morning, going back to the same building to finish the job. I told him I'd be in. That evening I picked my daughter up from school myself. I knew what I'd seen. I wasn't about to tell myself I'd imagined it or whatever. But work is hard to come by right now, and I have a young daughter And I'm no millionaire. With a partner along, it wouldn't feel so bad. I decided we'd go down together to the 7th floor and no further. Had another drink that evening for courage. In the morning, I swung by the office to pick up Sergey, my partner. We headed out. First thing on the roof, I put on my harness and clipped the carabiner to the railing. Sergey raised an eyebrow but didn't say anything. We started lowering the camera. I fed the cable. Sergey watched the screen and called out what he saw. The mold on the walls now reached all the way up to the 11th floor. Sergey was wondering aloud what could possibly cause that. I said nothing, just kept repeating to myself, no lower than the 7th, no matter what. But we didn't need to go lower. The thing was waiting for us at the 7th. It had set an ambush. I couldn't see the laptop screen, but I understood exactly what had happened when Sergey screamed. At the same instant, the cable was ripped from my hands with such force that without the gloves, my palms would have been shredded. Everything happened very fast after that. I heard the noise and gurgling from inside the vent shaft, had just enough time to register something else I couldn't name, and threw myself sideways. Sergey was in the middle of turning around, when the shaft opening seemed to explode. The tin rain cover above it went clanging away across the roof. A spray of filthy black threads or strips shot outward in every direction. The sound was like a jet tearing off the tarmac, a deep, gut-level roar that climbed in seconds to a raw, frantic shriek. Through the shriek, it seemed to me that above the brick lip of the shaft opening, amid a churning mass that looked almost sticky, the same expressionless mask face appeared. But it wasn't looking at me. A black ribbon, nearly transparent against the light, like a film of oil, wrapped itself around Sergey's body. He was dragged inside instantly. He hadn't even finished turning around, hadn't completed the motion he'd started. He rose into the air and vanished into the opening with a cry, folded in half, pulled through a gap too narrow for a human being. Something hit me in the chest, and I went backwards over the railing and fell off the roof. I blacked out somewhere in the fall. When I came to, jolted awake by a sharp pain in my gut, I wasn't frightened. I was completely calm and focused. I understood immediately that I was hanging on my safety line at the height of the 12th floor, and that our equipment hadn't been inspected since God knows when. But it had held. Like a climber, gripping the rope and pushing off the wall with my feet, I pulled myself back up onto the roof. It was a wreck up there. A black stain about 3 meters across, centered on the vent shaft opening. No blood. I stripped off my work clothes in the building's attic, leaving them there, and drove to the school in my undershirt and sweatpants. I pulled Nastya out of class. Her math teacher gave me a strange look, and explained to my daughter that she'd need to stay home for a while. Then I called the office, told them I quit, pulled my SIM card, and threw it away. A couple of times someone came to the door and rang the bell. I didn't even go to the peephole. I called the school's vice principal on the landline and explained that Nastya wouldn't be coming in for a while due to family circumstances, and got her assignments in advance. For almost 2 weeks, everything was quiet. I only went out to the little shop near our building. Eventually, I calmed down. We live on the complete opposite end of Moscow from that building. I don't have a job anymore, but I've got about 60,000 set aside, enough to keep us going for a while. I registered on some freelance platforms, figured I'd dust off the old skills. Then last night, everything went wrong when my daughter shook me awake on the couch mid-snore and asked, "Dad, who's knocking inside the wall?" That's where we are. Someone knocking inside the wall. That was yesterday. The man told us the knocking had been going on for a week before he called us in, which means the damage I saw in the concrete had accumulated over an entire week, which means I have some time before this bitch eats her way through into the apartment. Apparently, the side channels that feed into the bathroom and toilet are too narrow for her. I don't know how she found us. It's probably my fault. I only recently washed the coveralls with the black slime still on the leg. The thing with the wrong face must have a hell of a nose, and spent 2 weeks crawling after me, seeping through basements night by night, halfway across the city. Today, I'm going to set traps in the bathroom, and I'm going to buy my contact's Saiga, and every shell he has. Now let me explain what kind of help I need. I have nowhere to send my daughter. She has to get out of here. She's a wonderful girl, very well-mannered. She won't be any trouble. I'll visit her regularly and cover every expense. There's no family on my side, and none on her late mother's side either. I need you to take her in for a little while. 2 weeks, maybe less. I'm certain the thing is following me specifically, so you'll be in no danger. And in 2 weeks, one way or another, I'll have this sorted. I'm planning to sell the apartment, even at a loss if I have to, and leave with her for the countryside, out in Tver Oblast. There's a place. We'll run. Village houses don't have basements or ventilation shafts. So if there's any chance at all that you could take Nastya in, please, write to the address below as soon as you can. Please. As for whatever is knocking on the other side of the wall, trust me, I'll handle it.